we share our own bits of our life stories and journey, and encourages them, again, like I said, to be open and honest about what they feel they could make changes on their life. So my name's Penny, and we've got the lovely
Tara,
and we are part of the NHS in the Community, and we run a free course, and it's for people in Manchester who live with pre-diabetes or diabetes.
So Penny, her husband lives with diabetes, and for myself, I was diabetic. I'm now not even pre-diabetic, so I've managed to reverse it. So we've both got that lived experience.
So we started running the programme not long after the pandemic, because we found that people were obviously staying at home, maybe not being as active as they might have been before, eating perhaps what they wanted, and we found there was requests and increase for people who've been diagnosed with pre-diabetes or diabetes. Yeah, we decided to train to be able to deliver the programme. And basically it's about prevention, so it's very much around if the people are pre-diabetes, how they can avoid going to full-blown diabetes. If they're already diabetic, it's very much around what can we do to look at the symptoms. It's very important for people to understand that, you know, it's a long-term condition and it can develop, and it is a deteriorating condition, so unless we find ways to manage it, it can be difficult.
Yeah, I think it was as well, it's about the health equality of Manchester, and I think there was a study that showed that even children in Manchester had the highest diabetes rate in the country. So that's why I think we've kind of gone on the drive to be able to push it and promote it, and obviously try and educate as many people or patients as possible.
Yeah, there's also we found that when we were researching whether to train to do the diabetes course, we found that a lot of it was online, particularly again after the pandemic, or virtual, and not everybody wants to do that, so ours is face to face at venues across Manchester, so it makes it much more accessible for people who maybe don't want to go on technology or want to see a real person. You do that.
I think the main thing when we speak to patients with diabetes, a lot of it is around not understanding the foods that they should and shouldn't be eating, and how like how many carbs they should be having, how to manage their blood sugars, how to understand what a hypo is, or how to recognize one. And a lot of it is around obviously stress management as well, and not knowing that's one of the biggest contributors. So we found it's been really important, and people have kind of, you know, really absorbed that information, because they just don't really understand where to even start with diabetes. I think that's the biggest problem, is people not even knowing where to start and how to make the changes.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand some people are told literally maybe by a phone call, if they're lucky, that, oh, by the way, you're pre-diabetic, and perhaps if they're lucky, advised to go on the Diabetes UK website, which is a great website, although it's got so much wealth of information on it, can be overwhelming. And again, I think people always, if they're not inclined to use Google or the internet, wouldn't really know, and then they're just kind of left there then being called in every year. We were surprised when we first started delivering the programme that people didn't really even know what their blood sugar count was, for example, what their targets are and how to tackle that. So yeah, and understanding that there's other things other than just diet that might affect it, lack of exercise and keeping physically active, maybe looking at like Tara said, sleep can affect your diabetes, stress can really affect it, and just giving that little bit more of a deeper understanding really hopefully helps them to feel a little bit more in control of it, and that it's not going to be overtake their lives. So it is a free programme for people in Manchester who have a Manchester City Manchester GP or City of Manchester Council tax payment. It's not a Greater Manchester service, unfortunately, and it can be quite confusing because in Greater Manchester lots of people might have an M postcode, but really what we ask is people just to contact us directly or be referred to us, and then we will signpost them to whatever else is available in their area. And also it's for anyone who's been told they're pre-diabetic or diabetes. Literally, we don't check any of that. If they want to come on the programme and learn about diabetes, that's got to be positive for them and everyone around them.
Yeah, and they can self-refer, or they can come through the GP as well, so they can pick up the phone or they can email us. And it's also open to the carers as well, because sometimes obviously a lot of the people, especially in certain different cultures as well, it's not necessarily, say if it was a male that has the diabetes, it'd be the wife or the partner that would do the cooking. So a lot of the time a lot of people would like to bring their partner, so it's open to carers as well, so it's kind of a learnt journey as well. So yeah, it's open to carers, which is another different aspect that we have.
And the programme consists of 6 sessions, like I said, 1 day a week. And yeah, I think it's important to understand the reason why it's such a long session, with it's 2.5 hours each session once a week and for 6 weeks, because you can only make changes very small. We're trying to change lifestyles from when we were children and what we've been able to eat, what we want, we've been able to, you know, live like we want, and as we age, we can't get away with those things as easy. So, but trying to change those habits is really difficult, and it has to be very slow with very small steps, and that's kind of what where the encouragement comes from. It also talks about making sure they know that if they are diabetic, do they know how many checks and what checks they should be having every year, and really understanding the long-term implications of having diabetes, you know, because it's probably one of the major killers in the UK, particularly because it might not die of diabetes, but it leads to heart conditions, stroke, you know, neuropathy. And I guess the course kind of raises so much awareness around it. And because it's in a group setting with 2 tutors with lived experience, people can share their experiences, their stories, what works for them. And almost because it's a peer session with people that are related to and having knowledge of that diabetes, it's a really encouraging programme.
Yeah, and I think what makes us a little bit different is that it's not a very long session, so to speak. It might be for one day, so to speak. Ours is actually a 6-week programme, so it's learnt by repetition. So they'd go away each week, they'd set themselves an action plan of saying, right, this week I'm going to manage my carbs and I'm not going to go over by 180 per day. They come back and say, actually, I didn't manage that, but what I have found is that I realise I'm having too many carbs. This is what I need to do. And it's learnt by repetition, and we problem solve. And then we come back the next week and say, right, okay, let's try and do it a little bit differently. Maybe that step was a little bit too big for you. Let's scale it back and start again. So obviously that's why ours works a little bit differently, because it's by repetition week after week.
Yeah. I think also it's very non-judgmental because you are in a peer group. There's no judging. We try to encourage people to be as open and honest as they feel they can be, and then other people open up then and say, yeah, I don't do that very well, or you know. So sometimes they might do an action plan around just walking around the block to begin with to get the physical activity going. We talk about the importance of understanding when the ideal time to exercise is after you've eaten. So, you know, it goes into quite great detail, but I think it's really encouraging to them when they realise that we are not doctors or nurses, but we are people with that lived experience and have had to manage it ourselves or with people we live with. And that kind of makes it a bit more real, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's a lot to take on board, I think, when you're first diagnosed with pre-diabetes. And when we talk about the long-term symptoms and effects that might happen, I think people do wake up and think, yeah, this is worth investing in this time and effort to see what we can improve. And we get really good feedback from people who've done the program saying, you know, they've learned so much and they've not been offered anything like this before. And one of the topics that a couple of times we asked people to actually bring their own food labels in so we can look at understanding food labels. What is the carbohydrate? What's the recommended serving size for that? So we look at the traffic light system that you get on food, the red, amber and green. And people are always surprised. We're saying that actual packet is for 2 people, not for 1. So, you know, and those labels refer to 1 serving, not the whole packet. And people are really surprised and shocked. Sometimes they don't always... and it seems so simple when you tell them, but unless somebody raises that awareness, you might not always, you know, it might be all green and you think you're doing really well, when actually if you have the whole packet, it's going to be turning into amber and red potentially.
Yeah. We get them to keep food diaries as well. So they'd go away, they'd keep a food diary, they'd come back, and we've actually encouraged them to start testing and obviously doing the blood readings as well. And they'll say, oh, right, well, my blood reading was this, this and this. And we're like, well, okay, let's have a look at your diary. What did you eat the night before? What time did you finish eating? And kind of look at their lifestyle habits. So they could be stopping eating at 10 o'clock and not understanding, obviously, it's going to raise the blood sugars or the last meal that they've had. So having those understandings, but tying that in with understanding their blood sugars as well as what they're eating and the timing of when they're eating, and we found people really get engaged with, really enjoy it.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out though, because we are not clinicians, if there's any clinical questions that come our way, sometimes which there might be on the programme, we always redirect them and say, please make a note, speak to your GP about it next time you go there, you know, or make an appointment, particularly to go if you're not sure, or your practice nurse, because there's usually specialist diabetic. Another important thing we look at is helping them to learn how to maybe get the best out of their consultations with their GPs. There's some research that shows we only spend about 5 hours a year in total with our healthcare providers, and the rest of the time obviously we're looking after the condition ourselves. So we talk about, you know, the importance of getting the best out. How can we get the best out of our healthcare provider and GP with better communication? How can we make sure that we know we're taking the medication correctly? Maybe ask for a medication review with a GP pharmacist or the local pharmacy. So it's kind of trying to help people take a little bit more control and feel more responsible and feel like instead of being having things done to them, they're part of their healthcare and they're a partner in it.
Yeah, that they take some control. So as long as you're over the age of 18 and have either pre-diabetes, type 1 or type 2, and also we can provide an interpreter as well. If there's a language barrier, we can provide the interpreter.
Yeah. And it's very much around looking at healthy planning, looking at portion sizes with your food. So we do meal planning. We talk about physical activity, but we don't expect people to run marathons. We just talk about, how can you increase it a little bit. Yeah, so there's lots of elements to it, which is why it's such a long program of 1 session a week for 6 sessions. And those sessions are delivered in community centres or local health centres in South, Central and North Manchester. So yeah, you can wait for one that's nearest to you. So because you come in 6 times, it needs to be quite local usually. I think it's a case of there is a little bit about knowledge, finding out as much as you can about it, which can be scary because I think when you first start looking at diabetes, there's so many elements to it. For me personally, it was more a case of sharing the responsibility with my husband so that we were both invested in it and interested in it. And like Tara said, quite often, if it is the female in the house or the partner that does most of the cooking, it needs to be something that you need to be aware of. And even when you're going out to eat, it can be quite challenging if you're going with a group of people. I found you've got to be aware and, try and be quite confident to say, well, no, I'd rather not eat there. Could we eat somewhere else, that's maybe a bit more suitable for me? And no, I don't want a pudding. Don't make me, I don't, looking at your alcohol intake, for example, we don't tell people what to eat, but we increase knowledge so they can make good decisions. I guess that's more around it.
I think as well, it's the empowerment for me. I think it's obviously I manage mine by obviously lifestyle and diet, but also medication as well, and understanding that it has to be hard. It's hard work. You have to be able to put the effort in to be able to get the results out. It's not just a magic. It's not just a miracle cure. There isn't one, is there? It does take a lot of hard work. So being around people that either can come to the gym with me or come out for a walk with me, and that that kind of encouragement to help you maintain or get to your end goal is paramount, really. So that support and encouragement is really important.
And we have found sometimes that females will come on the program and then all of a sudden say, can I bring my husband next week, please? Because they've realized all of a sudden it's going to be a joint effort almost, really.
Yeah.
My husband's had diabetes for almost 20 years and still going strong, so with no complications. So yeah, it's important to be able to share that with them. So we share our own bits of our life stories and journey, and encourages them, again, like I said, to be open and honest about what they feel they could make changes on their life.